Valencia did not feel like a test. It felt like the first tremor of a civil war inside Yamaha. Under the winter light of a quiet circuit, two riders stood on opposite sides of a new machine that could either resurrect a fallen empire or bury it deeper than the ruins of the M1 era. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu arrived with a hunger Yamaha had forgotten. A man who came from the brutality of Worlds BK, who turned a dead BMW into a weapon, walked into MotoGP without fear, without nostalgia, without loyalty to old concepts. He touched the V4 for the first time and called it anything but negative. To him, the straight-line speed was promise, not problem. To him, the unknown was an invitation. Fabio Quartararo saw something else entirely. He saw another chapter of broken promises, another year of setbacks, another prototype failing to meet the rhythm of his prime. He carried the scars of an M1 dragged into irrelevance. He watched the V4 run wild in 2025 wildcards and felt thunder building behind his eyes. The contrast between them wasn't opinion, it was philosophy. And Yamaha had to choose. Build a future around the man who fears decline or the man who welcomes chaos. Valencia's pit lane always carries ghosts, but the 2025 postseason test carried something heavier. The M1, once Yamaha's sword, sat pushed aside like a museum piece. The new V4, raw and impatient, glared under the fluorescent lights. Engineers circled it like surgeons afraid of touching a beating heart. The paddock whispered, "This is the machine that will decide Yamaha's future." Two riders approached it with entirely different energies, and their shadows told the story before their words ever could. Fabio Quartararo walked toward the bike he had been begging Yamaha to build for 2 years, yet his steps were slow, deliberate, weighted. He had experienced the M1's decline lap by lap, race by race, season by season. He knew the feeling of potential evaporating in real time. The Valencia test was supposed to be clarity. Instead, it became confrontation. Toprak Razgatlıoğlu arrived differently. No tension, no hesitation. His stride was that of a man entering a fight he had already accepted the pain of. He had no emotional history with Yamaha's MotoGP branch. He didn't carry the burden of old development philosophies. He wasn't tied to the inline-4 era, the high corner speed identity, or the technical dogmas Yamaha had worshipped since Rossi's golden age. Where Fabio saw a fragile future, Toprak saw a blank canvas. The first laps told the truth Yamaha didn't want to admit. Fabio returned to the garage with a closed expression. The Frenchman's face rarely lies, and that day it exposed every doubt. The V4 didn't respond the way he wanted. It didn't give him the feedback he trusted. It didn't solve the existential problem that had haunted him through 2024 and 2025. Yamaha's development pace. His engineers tried to read him. He gave them nothing but clipped sentences and long silences. Then Toprak returned from his opening laps, and the contrast was violent. He took off his helmet smiling, not impressed, but energized. Not satisfied, but intrigued. Anything but negative, he said. The speed on the straight, very fast. To Yamaha, these words were oxygen, because they came from a man who had already proven that he could take a bike with problems and turn it into a nightmare for everyone else. BMW was not a machine built for world domination, yet Toprak bent it to his will. Yamaha knew this. Quartararo knew this. So when Toprak said the V4 had potential, it didn't matter that he was still adapting. It mattered that he believed. And belief is a currency MotoGP engineers rarely ignore. But deeper currents moved beneath the surface. Fabio's frustration wasn't just about speed, it was about betrayal. Yamaha had promised a revolution, but the early version of the V4 behaved like a prototype without soul. Quartararo had spent 2 seasons sharpening feedback, begging for horsepower, asking for aero modernization. What he saw in Valencia felt like Yamaha had not listened, because the bike's DNA didn't reflect his demands. Toprak had no such expectations. He came in blind and welcomed what he found. 2 riders, 1 machine, and a philosophical divide deep enough to fracture a factory. Yamaha needed unity. Instead, Valencia exposed conflict. And the question emerged from the dust. Who carries Yamaha's future? The man built by the M1 or the man unshackled by it? Comment below. Fabio's feedback sheets became shorter. His debriefs became colder. The team saw it, a rider losing psychological connection to the machine beneath him. In MotoGP, that disconnect is fatal. Once trust breaks, it doesn't return easily. Meanwhile, Toprak adapted faster than Yamaha predicted. His first problem was braking technique. His signature WSBK rear tire anchored style destabilized the V4. But once he adjusted, he unlocked a depth of braking potential that Yamaha engineers had not seen since Prime Rossi. And that terrified Fabio. Because once Toprak began matching Fabio's pace on the same bike, without MotoGP experience, without Michelin tire literacy, without years of M1 refinement, a narrative whispered through the paddock. Toprak is the rider Yamaha may rebuild around. Fabio is the rider Yamaha may lose. The emotional collapse accelerated when Quartararo witnessed Yamaha favoring V4 aggression over M1 legacy. The engineers weren't ignoring him out of disrespect, they were following survival logic. A factory drowning cannot cling to the past. Every hour Toprak spent learning the V4 widened the shadow over Fabio's future. Instead of one leader in Yamaha's development direction, the factory now had a rival dynamic. The believer versus the skeptic. The hopeful versus the betrayed. The newcomer versus the champion. Inside Fabio, the storm finally cracked. He asked Yamaha privately why his feedback seemed secondary, why his concerns about stability, turning behavior, and tire wear weren't reflected in overnight changes, why Yamaha was trying to build a bike that behaved like a Ducati copy instead of building a bike that behaved like his M1. The answer he received was devastating. The V4 is the future. The inline 4 is gone. And with that sentence, the collapse of Fabio's emotional foundation became irreversible. Across the garage, Toprak felt none of this collapse. His world was rising. His confidence grew. His braking telemetry impressed. His adaptation rate shocked. He spoke less, rode more, asked only for clarity on electronics. And Yamaha loved that. But the collapse here wasn't Fabio alone. Yamaha itself was collapsing under the weight of its own contradictions. They wanted to keep Fabio, but they needed to follow Toprak's instincts. They wanted a predictable machine, but they built a volatile engine. They wanted peace, but created a war. And the question sharpened like a blade. Is this collapse the death of an era or the birth of a tyrant? Comment below. As we kept saying, Yamaha will move on, but the years went with no results, and the prime of Fabio is gone. That hunger, that brutality style cornering, showing no mercy on overtakes, all gone with those blood times, which got nothing but numbness. Yamaha now stands between two futures. Future A, follow Fabio, a stable, corner-focused, smooth-delivering machine that honors the M1 spirit. But the grid has moved on. Ducati, Aprilia, KTM, all V4S. Yamaha would lose the horsepower war forever. Future B, follow Toprak, a violent, torque-loaded, aggressive MotoGP machine built for breaking monsters and psychological hunters. This aligns with modern MotoGP realities. This embraces chaos as performance. Yamaha cannot build both futures. From now, where does this put them? The time will tell us. Comment below. Subscribe for more savage breakdowns.